Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, I'm going to react to the craziest hoarding from Buried Alive episodes. Now, Buried Alive, I think, is a show about people who just hoard and hoard and hoard. They just refuse to throw stuff away, and it just piles up around them, almost like encasing them in like a tomb of belongings. It's just absolutely nuts. And, you know, for you to make the top 10, you must barely be able to walk in your house, which is just insane to me. I'm not saying I'm a minimalist or anything, but you got to know when to let some things go. So yeah, this should be a really interesting one. So let's do it.
Letting go may be hard, but some people take things a little too far. Welcome to Ms. Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 craziest hoarding Buried Alive episodes. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're looking at the wildest episodes of TLC's Hoarding Buried Alive, either because the people featured had some of the worst clutter in the show's run, something crazy happened in the episode, or both. Number 10, This House Killed Her. The show is no stranger to emotional situations, but one of the most upsetting was in this season 4 episode. When the 65-year-old mother of 3 children passes away, it's down to the adult kids Amy, Cheryl, and Jimmy to clear out the clutter and prove that Mom owned her house in the aftermath of her death.
This is insane.
This is crazy.
While Jimmy lived with their mother and knew the true extent of her hoarding problem, the 2 sisters had no idea. It's difficult to watch them come to
How did they have no idea? Didn't they visit their mum?
terms with the way their mother lived and died, and even more so when the biohazard team began to throw out all the deceased Cynthia's many possessions.
I just miss her so much.
Yeah, he loved her.
She was my mom.
Number 9, 3 apartments, 3 hoarders.
These are all lesbian novels. They're going to your clubhouse.
What?
How many lesbians we got here?
At least 4 to 6 that live here, couples.
In a first for hoarding, this episode featured 3 hoarders all living in separate apartments in the same apartment building.
No way.
Even more bizarre, the 3 of them were all completely unaware that they were living so close to people who suffered from the same problem. There are more lighthearted moments this time around, as one struggles to part with her collection of lesbian erotica, and many of the workers resort to throwing items out of the windows to get them out of the building.
We'll open up a lesbian friggin' library and donate it with your name on it.
Throughout the episode, tension remains high between the hoarding trio and the owner of the community complex, who desperately wants things cleaned up. Number 8.
It's crazy, you know, there's some things that are just trash. Like, you should know that they should just be thrown away. Why would you keep all this stuff? A lot of it just looks like rubbish.
They're crawling. Audiences frequently find themselves wondering how the residents of these hellish homes manage to live in them without getting sick. And this became especially evident in season 4, when 2 people working on TLC's cleanup crew contracted Hantavirus while filming this episode. While not contagious from human to human, it spread through breathing in air contaminated by the virus, which comes from the fecal matter and urine of some rodents.
Hantavirus is a disease which is spread by rodents, and when you go through processes like cleaning a home, sweeping, vacuuming, these sorts of things, it goes into the air.
Kay's home was absolutely riddled with pests, including snakes and possums, and the worst part of it all, she would still barely admit that she had a problem, even when her own home had to be completely quarantined.
I lived with that stuff for 10 years. It was, at one point, something important to me.
Number 7, full of rats. Kay may have been playing host to an array of furry friends, but hoarder Michelle took that to a whole new level in her
looks like a
aptly titled
garbage dump.
episode. Property investors want to buy her home, but soon discover that Michelle's problem has damaged the house to its core, as it is absolutely teeming with rats.
We pulled out big rats, small rats, medium-sized rats, spiders, and a bevy of other little flying creatures, and of course, a possum.
I'm not exaggerating. I genuinely feel a bit sick.
She's also technically homeless, but seems unable to accept it as a team tries to help her. But perhaps the episode's worst moment comes at the beginning, as Michelle gives a tour of her kitchen, showing the filthy pots and pans she still uses to cook with to the cameras.
Oh, pots and pans are in the kitchen. I use this to make quiche.
Number 6, You're Not Taking My Kids. Karen isn't the only victim of her hoarding. Her 2 young sons are quoted as saying they feel trapped in her nightmarish home.
I think my mom might struggle with hoarding. I feel like I'm trapped inside.
The episode begins with the kids being taken away by Child Protective Services because of concern for their well-being, with Karen offered the ultimatum that if she doesn't clean up her act within 48 hours, she will not regain custody of her boys. But the situation is also notable for reducing psychologist Dr. Becky Beaton to tears when she sees the sick and neglected family dog soon rehomed by the SPCA. Number 5, worst I've ever seen.
What causes this though? Is it like a side effect of maybe poverty, like you didn't have a lot of stuff growing up, so when you can afford stuff, you don't want to throw anything away? It's just a theory, but what causes this?
Karen's home was thrown into crisis when local officials told her they would tear down her property for not being up to code.
My obsession is keeping things, buying things.
While investigating, they found it severely damaged without running water and full of cat feces. One code enforcer couldn't even stand to be in the building without throwing up. Karen's realization that the home her parents built could be condemned is heartbreaking. Meanwhile, in the same episode, Teresa struggles to balance her shopping compulsion with her chronic fatigue syndrome, meaning her house is completely overrun with junk and her illness renders her unable to clean.
It's just kind of filled with a lot of stuff.
Number 4, I Can't Breathe. Another mother at risk of losing custody of her child was Lorena, whose own sister was attempting to have 10-year-old Alexia put into her care out of concern for the child's well-being.
That child deserves better.
Lorena's hoarding has tragic beginnings, all stemming from when her ex-boyfriend brutally assaulted and raped her 5 years earlier in her own front garden, even slitting her throat. However, this is one unfortunate story that actually has a happy ending. Lorena managed to completely turn her life around, separating from her hoard and keeping it under control, prioritizing her young daughter's safety and quality of life above all else.
I probably wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for one of my daughters. She saved me.
Number 3.
Man, I feel so bad for her. Like, obviously the trauma triggered this thing. Oh man, that's so sad. But this is just incredible. I mean, can someone please let me know if you know someone who is a hoarder themselves? Like, do you know why they are the way they are? Like, is it something that they've always had? I'd love to know.
Is that a goat? A show with no shortage of horrors reaches extremes with Joyce and her collection of antique dolls. When her marriage fell apart, she turned to the dolls for comfort. And despite running out of money and losing her job, she continues to buy as many of these dolls as she can get her hands on.
I like dolls that smile, especially when you have a lot of depression and stuff. It's nice to have someone or even something smiling at you all the time.
The episode's other hoarder is Donnie, a retired Marine who doesn't just have his own personal junkyard, but also a lively herd of goats.
Is that a fire truck? That's a fire truck. Is that a goat? Yep. I got about 10 of them in there.
But Donnie feels under siege from the county, from which he has amassed thousands in fines and 2 jail sentences. Number 2, just tear it down. Karen's neglected dog may have ultimately been adopted by a vet after being removed from her home and given to animal control. But the outcome wasn't nearly so pleasant for Doug and Darlene's missing cat. Sickeningly, in this episode, the cat's mummified remains were found trapped underneath a heavy dresser, where it had perished 2 years earlier.
2 years.
Oh my gosh.
But that is Rat Cat.
Oh.
The hardest moment was when we found the Rat Cat. She wasn't even the cat, she was our child.
And that's not the worst of it. They also have a broken septic tank, which means the house is steadily overflowing with raw sewage and human waste, to the point where demolition seems like a better option than attempting to clean.
That is the worst thing I've seen. The cat passed away and its remains just rotted in.
Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions.
It has to change. It has to change. I can't live like this. And I need some help to fix it.
The city declared her home unlivable, and the power, gas, and water were shut off.
Just thing on top of thing on top of thing.
You've got a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
Number 1. Sleeping in a dumpster.
Old milk. This one is from June, so that's like 7 months, 7 months ago.
Inarguably the craziest episode of all, stubborn hoarders and deadly clutter weren't the only dangers people had to worry about. Laura is attempting to clean her home with the help of her sons and the show's crew, but their lives are threatened when a fire breaks out in her garbage-filled kitchen.
Oh no. Oh no. They need an extinguisher. They need an extinguisher.
Somebody mistakenly turns on the stove, which is covered in newspapers and other flammable materials, leaving them struggling to extinguish the fire, or else the entire house will go up in flames. They eventually manage to stop the blaze, but it makes for one of the most intense moments in the show's whole run.
I mean, it could have gotten ugly real fast. And what's on the floor? Trash, papers, plastic. I mean, done.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from Ms. Mojo.
There were like scenes of that were difficult to watch, like the rat-infested place, the place with the mummified cat. Just to be honest, all of them, you know, it's sad because there's something that's happened to that person for them to live like that. Like, I don't think a normal person chooses to or would want to live like that because of the smell and just not being able to move around freely in your place. I hope they get the help that they need because they clearly need some. Real crazy. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.